From KPFK in Los Angeles, California, Valley Free Radio in Florence, and WMBR in Cambridge, Massachusetts, WNUC in Detroit, and BikeTalk.org worldwide, this is Bike Talk.
Bike Talk.
Welcome to Bike Talk. I'm Taylor Nichols.
And I'm Nick Richard.
Nick, we are in the same studio.
I know. It's amazing.
Well, we got a lot of attention for last week's show. We got a lot of listener emails and a lot of feedback on the show. But before we get into that, recently we've talked a lot about when you're traveling, a great way to visit another city is on their bike share program. And we've talked about that and how expensive bike share can be in certain cities. But another way of doing that is a bike tour. And the first time I did that was in Barcelona. I did a bike tour one time, but now it's exploded and it's all over. It's in Los Angeles. I don't know, is there one in Northampton?
Is there a bike tour, like an official bike tour? A guide?
Yeah, like a business, like someone's opened a business, like a shingle, you know?
I haven't seen one.
Well, maybe this will spark somebody to open a bike touring business in Northampton, Massachusetts.
Yeah, maybe it's me.
But Jonathan Weiss, who's a longtime listener of the show and an advocate, did a bike tour in Portland, and he was good enough to get a little recording and send it to us. So here's Jonathan Weiss from Portland, Oregon.
I'm here with Charlotte at, where are we?
We're at Cycle Portland in Old Town Portland, Oregon.
Charlotte, can you introduce yourself a little better than I just did?
Yeah, totally. Hi, my name's Charlotte. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a tour guide and bike mechanic and a whole bunch of other things here at Cycle Portland, and we basically put people on bikes to enjoy the city and see it in the best way possible.
Now, we just finished a 2-hour tour.
Yeah. So we just did our Essential Portland City Tour. So we take just a little casual ride around the heart of the city and learn a little bit about the history, the nature, and what makes it such a good place to ride a bike.
Terrific. And you do other tours other than the basic one? Or
we do,
Essential?
Yeah. So we actually we offer 4 tours right now. We have a foodie tour where you get to try some of the local flavors of Portland here. We have a brewery tour, of course, where you can go and try some different beers from our craft breweries here. And then we've also just started offering a gravel bike tour up in Forest Park for experienced riders who want to go on a little more serious of a ride, but want to see the city on a guided tour still.
Charlotte, that was terrific. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was Jonathan Weiss again on a bike tour in Portland, Oregon.
Thanks, Jonathan. And I remembered a bike tour company in Northampton, All Out Adventures.
Oh, great. So this is a shout out to All Out.
Absolutely.
So I was saying that we got a lot of attention from last week's episode. We had an interview with Kyle Brazil, who is
well, we're calling him a bike hater.
Well, he's not really a bike hater. He even said he doesn't hate bikes. He just doesn't like the plan of the bike lane project that is going in on Fountain Avenue. But I also think that's kind of a dodge, because a lot of people do say that. Oh, I'm an avid cyclist. Right. I just don't like this plan.
For the purposes of what we're doing in this episode, we're calling him the bike hater. I hope that's not too offensive.
Right. Or at least the bike lane hater. And the other interview was with Diane Alisa, who is the author of Love Letters to Suburbia. And we got some feedback about that also. And Nick only played the second part of his interview last week. And so this week we're going to play the first part of that interview. But before we go into that, I thought, Nick, you might want to talk a little bit about some of the feedback you got from the interview with Diane and some of the feedback on her book.
Well, this listener didn't read the book, but heard the interview and quoted a reviewer of the book who was, I guess, triggered by it. And this reviewer said, "The whole third section, Restoring the American Family, is icky to me. Diane talks about focusing on family values, which nowadays is unfortunately often a conservative dog whistle that indicates anti-choice, homophobic attitudes and rhetoric. It seems that rather than being of the opinion that everyone who wants to get married and have children should be able to afford to raise them in a community that will support them, the author believes everyone must get straight married at a young age and immediately begin having babies in order to create these types of communities." I didn't hear that.
Yeah, I didn't hear that either. And you and I both listened to the book last week. I understand where they're coming from. There were notes of that or colors of that. But you know what I've always said, Nick? I've always said that bike advocacy makes strange bedfellows.
We've also said on this show that, biking should or does align with conservative values.
Right.
Like independence, freedom, I guess.
Freedom of choice. I think as bike advocates, we need a big tent. And we've often talked on the show about how there is a left-right split in biking and bike infrastructure. So when someone who maybe leans a little bit on the right comes out in favor of bicycle infrastructure and safe street infrastructure, I'm all for it, even if I don't agree with everything that she says in her book.
The interview we played last week was just about the things that people were uncomfortable with about her book. And that's maybe why that interview struck our listener that way.
But now we're going to play the first part of your interview, which is really much more on, living in a village as opposed to in a suburban environment that is dominated by cars.
I came across your book, A Love Letter to Suburbia. And first of all, it doesn't really sound like a love letter.
Yes, well...
Have you... anything?
I know it's not a love letter to suburbia, but in a way it is, because I think that the suburbs are kind of our way out of the catastrophe of car dependence. And so I go through half of my book trying to tear down suburbia and then build it back up by subverting suburbs into villages. And I really feel like it's our ticket out of this urban catastrophe that we've created for ourselves. So in a way, it very much is a love letter to suburbia.
That's interesting. And I think you say you're not an urbanist, but, there's a lot of, the Venn diagram has a big intersection.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like it's becoming less true as time goes on that I'm in this urban realm and I'm trying to solve city planning and all that, but I really didn't study it. I actually studied theater, which I think was extremely helpful for me writing my book, just because I really had to hone down on culture and politics, and there was a lot of literature involved, and I just was wrestling with a lot of things. And when I discovered urbanism, it all felt very connected to me. And so that's my caveat, that I didn't start as an urbanist. There's so many people that are much more expert than I guess. I put in a lot of effort to synthesize information for a general audience that they may be interested in it. So it's an odd line now at this point.
So you had like a moment of conversion, right?
I did, yeah.
You were watching a YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm. Jason Slaughter, I know that he orange pills a lot of people.
Orange pill? I thought that was blue or red.
Yeah. Orange pill is when you pretty much give up on normal politics and you just start caring about urban design, which is exactly what happened to me. I was like, this is superfluous to our built environment. I need to focus on this. I just am a graduated mother, and I couldn't figure out where I wanted to live. I didn't understand how I could escape a lot of the modern ailments that exist for families right now. And the video that pulled me in was why I'm not raising my kids in suburbia. And everything, my whole world just clicked after I saw that video. I seriously became a little bit manically obsessed with urbanism because everything in my world was making sense. And I wrote my book in 6 weeks after I decided to write a book. I just had so much information that I needed to expel that the book was the natural conclusion to that.
That is amazing because it's very full of research. And I mean, you cite how many books there?
I don't know how many books, but I think there's close to 300 sources in my book.
So you saw this Why I Don't Raise My Kids in Suburbia video by Jason Slaughter, and then you spent a long time reading books, and then you spent 6 weeks writing this book, A Love Letter to Suburbia.
Yep, I think I saw the video in March, and I was done by the book in November. And we actually started a nonprofit in between that time, and I started a blog, and I realized that the blog wasn't going to be enough for me. But that's where I got my initial following, actually, was from my little blog.
So, well, first of all, maybe I should just say, what are the ailments of suburbia? Because you say it's killing us. You compare it to a vampire. I'm sure there's a lot of other. You go through the history of how it happened, and it really sounds like a parasite, siphoning off everything from cities while it's dying itself. I guess people need to read the book, but what's your elevator pitch for why suburbia is killing us?
I was thinking about this the other day, and I'd probably say that if you couldn't survive without the automobile, then you probably didn't build your city correctly. I think that cities need to be self-sufficient, and there's not even density available in suburban settings. It's just homes. And so I often just equate it to being very dysfunctional. If children can't pick up eggs from the grocery store, or elderly can't walk around to do errands when they can't drive anymore, are you living in a functional place where that can happen, where the most vulnerable members of society are able to move? And suburbia is the complete opposite of that. I find that everything is designed for the car, and it's kind of being a fish in murky water. You don't really understand until you are in clear water how much of the United States is like a giant parking lot. And we just think it's normal to drive away from our home and go to Walmart and for there to be no beautiful public spaces, but it's not normal. It's designed for a machine and not for human beings. And really just economically, politically, socially, it just degrades over time. It's a little bit frightening actually how urban design is hurting us.
And you look at American cities and culture before cars, you bring up the Newsies. Mm-hmm. That was at the beginning of the book. Just how kids could be before everything was designed for the automobile.
Yeah, I love the Newsies. I'm a big fan of the musical because I'm a theater buff myself. But this has been a question on my mind for a very long time. Where do children belong in our society? Because as a kid, I guess I was watching very cool children on television and in books, and they're being shown as extremely competent, and I just could not find it in myself. And I was very, very confused, I suppose, at my incompetence. I admired these caricatures and couldn't figure out why I couldn't involve myself in the same thing. And just as an adult, I've been thinking for a long time that children are incredibly competent, and yet they aren't. And I realized that was because of a suburban setup, that you have separated children away from society, and so they don't know how to grow up in society. And it only gets worse as generations go along and you have less organic connection over time. I read the book, I reference it in my book, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, of a character who is growing up on American streets, and she had so much freedom, and she just did things a lot earlier, and it was okay. She was generally safe. Her mother and father were okay with their children walking around American streets. And that's when I realized that the suburban experiment is not enabling children to their fullest potential. And now with the invent of technology, it's become even worse. We can't function with so little stimulation and community that we just engulf ourselves in television, media, social media, all that.
And you talk about everything's a paid for experience, a curated experience. And it's a little bit like a parenting book.
Yes. Did you read my whole book?
No. I am almost...
Not to put you on the spot.
I read it weirdly. I've got the audiobook, which you kindly sent, and I listen to it mostly while I'm driving. And so on the weekdays, I was listening to it, and this weekend I fell behind.
Yeah, no worries.
What was it that you were going to
just reference? My last section is all about families, how children are able to function in village environments much better than the suburbs, how infants can be better cared for when they have urban designs that take into account for their needs. You just mentioned that it was a parenting book, and I'm kind of going through what I think healthy family relationships look like in that last section.
So to get to what you call pedestrian first infrastructure or villages. That's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Is suburbia the same thing as car dependent? Is that what suburbia is? Just it's a place where you're dependent on cars?
Yeah, I would say so. Any type of urban design that is using only car infrastructure to get around. There are suburbs and then there's suburban infrastructure. The entire setup is valued toward the car. So you're not necessarily going to be in a single family house, but you have to deal with the consequences of the infrastructure anyway.
Are there examples of pedestrian first villages in America, modern America?
I think in the way that I set up, probably not, but there are many places, I think in Philadelphia, probably more in the East, that have walkability much better than we do, but they're still in a suburban economy, is how I like to describe it. The Walmarts, the McDonald's, the franchises, they just kind of take over the economy because of the convenience car-driven value system. So whenever somebody tells me that I should move away, I basically tell them that I'm actually trying to shift the core value systems that America is relying upon in terms of transportation and housing. For example, with a Strode, every line of code is valued for the car to get through as efficiently as possible. And I'm trying to shift that code towards people. So instead of the whole road is designed for the car, we're now designing the road for the person. And that generally means the road is thinned and slower. And the car travel doesn't exist quite as much in those human spaces.
So Strode does that come from Charles Marone?
Yeah, that's Charles Marone. Mm-hmm.
The founder of Strong Towns and the author of Confessions of a Recovering Engineer. And would you be a strong towner?
I think so. When we started our nonprofit and car dependency, that was one of our first questions, was if we were going to join Strong Towns. But I think we had a bit of a different vision. But I really respect Strong Towns, and I probably wouldn't be here without Charles Marone. He's amazing.
Mm-hmm. And you talk about a bottom-up approach?
Yeah, he has the same type of language. He's more focused on a lot of the technical aspects of city planning, the financial part. And I use a bit of that in my book because I need people to understand how financially insolvent it is. But mine is probably more of a cultural exploration of pain points that Americans are feeling and how urban design is directly related to that. So I have a much warmer approach, a less technical approach, and I talk a lot about families and children.
One of the things you talk about is not making driving harder before you have the infrastructure for getting people out of cars.
Yeah.
I don't know how much that's being done, but you have congestion pricing in New York City, but then again, they have a great subway system.
Yeah.
But if you do that, you will create a backlash and you'll make it harder for people to embrace the ideas.
Yeah. Yep. And that's because I was a suburbanite myself. If anybody was trying to do something to the road, I was pretty annoyed by it because for me, I am influenced by the design of the road just as much as anyone else. And the design of the road makes you feel like you must speed and that nothing is in your way and you're trying to get to a place as fast as possible. And so much of that is connected to design. The entire setup is for a car. So if you were to take away cars or even if you were to do public transportation first, it just makes everyone very mad because they can't get to where they're going when they need to. And they don't understand why it's necessary. It is a form of freedom in their minds. And so you really do have to incentivize the economy in other places. And I suggest that be in the suburbs, in neighborhoods where people can walk to their bakeries and soap shops and all that.
You know, when you look at people and their lifestyles, they're victims.
Mm-hmm.
I think you say something about this, that you have to take heroic measures just to live in a healthy way.
Yeah. I love the way you put that. It's so true.
Oh, I thought I was paraphrasing you.
The word heroic, I think it's great. And yeah, just the amount of discipline it takes. And I think that's something that's been very surprising to people when they come onto my page and they ask about my movement or they see a reel. It's that I am explaining to them that they are a victim of suburban living and that it makes them poorer and that it restricts their freedom to move. And it's very startling because the propaganda for the vehicle is so strong, and the approach, I think, from former urbanists hasn't quite been that straightforward, that everything in suburban infrastructure is a monumental effort to stay healthy, to have friends, to raise children. This form of freedom that we've been told that we have, it's not actually there. It's very difficult to live in suburban America, and everyone's talking about it. They just haven't really pinpointed where it's happening. They think it's politics, and they think it's the school systems, and they think it's technology, and it's really just a modern way of building that is very new and very degenerative.
And you talk a lot about zoning.
Zoning is an interesting topic because I can see the value of zoning in a way, right? You don't want to live next to an industrial plant, and you don't want to be disturbed by life that is unpleasant, right? And you don't want too many cars, and you don't want too many people. I can see an argument for some types of zoning, but the manner of zoning that favors car travel, we have to get rid of it. It's very destructive. It doesn't make any sense for family life because even though we've created these family-centered type zoning with residentials, they can't actually function in it. And it's taking, like, for example, children 16, 17, 18 years to enter society and an adult model and be able to drive a car. It's something that I think we have to do away with and be more open and more flexible in where we say things should be put.
So you mentioned you want to solve the design problems. It's not one person, and I don't know if you see it happening in your lifetime, but meanwhile, you're trying to get out of it for yourself and your family. And
yeah.
You're riding bikes, you have this nonprofit, Ending Car Dependency, you're living in the sweet spot of density.
Yeah, so I'm actually in a normal suburb. I'm living with 2 other families in a single family home. We've kind of jankily separated the downstairs into apartment units, and it's not beneficial, but this is the way that I have found a village for myself, because one of the steps in my book, the first step is mixed use, mixed wealth, mixed house, that you have an ecology of businesses, housing types, and wealth. And so for me, right now in this single family suburb, that's how I've great in density for my benefit, because my children are with their grandparents and their aunts and uncles and cousins. We're close enough to the commercial district that even though it's not super safe, I can take a bike with my children, which is very such a blessing for me because I have 3 children under 3, and stuffing them all in a car seat is really difficult. So I'm glad to put them on my bucket bike and drive to Walmart. I'm trying to get the word out. I'm hoping for a large cultural movement away from suburban living. I'm hoping that my book is compelling enough that people, even if they don't agree with everything, can now start talking about walkability instead of car-centric design, and kind of have the cultural revolution that the 1950s saw with Suburbia, which took a little bit of time, but it also happened all at once. They were warming up to the 1950 suburbs, and then it just took off, and everything was built in a matter of 10 years. I'm hoping that I can rally the people around me as well, and we can start rethinking even my own suburb. I don't know how long I'll be living in this particular suburb, but my goal, now that I have my audiobook out, is to basically start reaching out and saying, I know you're concerned about this problem, and this is how we can solve it, and kind of take down the barriers. My husband and I were thinking about drafting some legislation this year so that people can actually start a village if they want.
Well, I guess I shouldn't have said what I said about a lifetime then, because 10 years, I mean, I'm ready. Let's do that then, if that's an option. Did you want to say anything else about End Car Dependency?
End Car Dependency is my nonprofit. Anybody can email me on that website. They can find my book there. They can also find my book almost on any platform. My audiobook is out right now. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and listen to my book. I'm so excited about it. It took 9 months, and I thought it was going to take 1 month. It's kind of like renovating a house. I completely misjudged how long that process.
Including the audiobook. Did you voice the audiobook, by the way?
I did, yeah.
Wow, there's like acting in there.
Yeah.
I could see the theater background.
Thank you. I wanted it to be interesting.
Definitely. It's up there for me with some of the people that you referenced, like Peter Norton, and Charles Marone. And do you want to just say real quick some of your influences besides Jason Slaughter?
Yeah, Charles Marone.
Jane Jacobs.
Jane Jacobs was such a huge part of my exploration on urbanism. My other influence was Sharon Heller. She wrote Vital Touch, and so much of my childhood and infant information came from that book. I couldn't function as a mother in American society and also do the things she talks about in her book, like caring and physical touch and community. And so that was such a huge influence on just how we should be planning urban design around children. There's Peter Norton.
Some of these books are in this sort of canon of urbanism, belongs in the canon. Not just because it's so comprehensive, but because it comes at it from a different perspective. Suburbia, while you're definitely seeing it for what it is, it's also, you're not looking down on it, the people who live there.
Yeah, I think that's a really important part of the message, because these people, like you said, are victims, and they are a bit defensive about the whole urban thing. And I understand them. I understand why they want the single family home, and I understand why they think the car is freedom, and I understand why they think it's great for families. And my hope was that the book is a gentle way to pull them out of all of the propaganda that they've been listening to and show them how they are suffering because of this thing that they're clinging to. I have a lot of hope for these people, honestly, I do. I feel like they're ready to hear this message. I don't even know if they would have been ready even 5 years ago, but I think that they're ready to hear it now, and that they want a better future for their children and for themselves, and that they're so tired of consuming. And this vision of a village gives them, for the first time in a long time, the ability to create, to have local power again, to know their neighbor, to have their businesses succeed without Walmart coming in and tearing it down. I just think that for the people who will read it, and I've had a lot of experience with people reading my book, that they're just excited about it. They love the idea of having control again and having healthy children and being off screen. So I have a lot of hope in my message.
Maybe you'll come on again, because there's a lot to cover.
There's so much to cover.
I want to talk about your movement. Thanks, Diane Alisa, author of Love Letter to Suburbia, for coming on Bike Talk.
Yes, thank you so much. It was wonderful.
So again, that was Diane Alisa talking about her book, Love Letter to Suburbia. Between last week's and this week's episode, if you didn't get enough, go ahead and get the book. But there's a lot of other great books that we've talked about on the show. Paved Paradise last week, Crossings, The History and Mystery of the Bicycle, There Are No Accidents, The Walkable City, Arbitrary Lines, Killed by a Traffic Engineer. Lots of books and lots of authors we've had on the show. Now, let's talk about the first interview from last week, which was Kyle Brazil.
Who I'm calling the bike hater, but we're thinking that might be too much.
Yeah, maybe a little bit too much. I mean, we were kind of funny when we were calling him the bike lane hater, because sometimes people call certain politicians, like the bike lane lady, and Lucy Maloney in Vancouver, the bike lane, council person. Mm-hmm. And so we were just sort of countering that with the bike lane hater.
He did say that he thought that it was a progressive plot to put in bike lanes, and they're trying to do it everywhere, right?
Right.
Okay.
The all-powerful bike lobby.
I mean, yeah. So we heard from a longtime listener that happens to be a professional planner that wanted to respond to some of the arguments raised by the West Hollywood bike lane hater.
So again, if you haven't heard the interview, go back to last week's episode, 2535, and listen to the interview that Kyle gives. And then this is a response to that.
It begins with, Dear Bike Talk, thanks for sharing the segment with the West Hollywood bike hater. It's always interesting to get a peek into what non-bikey people think. Taylor did a good job of exercising restraint.
Pardon, what was that last part?
Taylor did a good job of exercise. He's calling it restraint. I think he's being nice. And letting the opponent speak while still interjecting to offer a few counterpoints. But I think he thinks you didn't
do enough.
Yeah, I think so. But you did. You did a great job. I thought I would have. Anyway, after listening to the interview, I wanted to offer my analysis of the conversation and provide rebuttals to the bike lane opponent. But a lengthy email may be dry, so here are the rebuttals presented as a script.
This is great. So it starts with a fictional bike lane hater. The Federal Highway Administration, or FHWA, advises against road diets on streets with daily volumes over 25,000, and that the project would violate federal standards or otherwise be a bad candidate for a road diet.
We have Kyle saying this.
The expectation is it creates congestion, right? If you look at the Federal Highway Administration's guidance, they recommend road diets for roads that carry up to 20 to maybe 25,000 average daily traffic. This fountain carries 35,000. So by the FHA's own standards, this would not be an ideal candidate for a road diet. So I think the expectation is this will create congestion and diversion.
The listener script says bike talk, so that's going to be me. One study showed that the figure you're citing isn't actually a rule, but rather a guide.
And then I would say, okay, but the point still stands. Fountain has too much traffic for a bike lane.
So Taylor is the bike lane hater, in case anybody is just tuning in, okay? And then Bike Talk says, there's an academic paper that addresses this point head on. The paper is called Take the High Volume Road, Analyzing the Safety and Speed Effects of High Traffic Volume Road Diets. It points out that there's a circular logic that has prevented road diets in higher volume settings. Basically, it says that the 20 to 25,000 traffic figure you're citing stems from a body of case studies that just so happened to largely be below 20,000 daily trips. Those case studies proved successful, and so that figure was codified, not because road diets don't work in higher volume settings, but because it hasn't been tested much, if at all. Now, people take the conclusion that road diets can't work in higher volume settings, but this is wrong. It's simply that few cities have been willing to go above that threshold because it hasn't been tested. The paper specifically says there is little research on the safety or traffic effects of such high traffic volume road diets, in no small part because the federal 20,000 ADT average daily traffic guidance is likely to have dissuaded local jurisdictions from implementing road diets on higher traffic volume corridors.
And the bike lane hater says, that's interesting.
Yeah. I wonder if he'd actually say that.
I think what it's saying is that the studies that were done on roads with 20,000 average daily uses or less. Not that that's only where those projects work. That's just where the studies were done.
And then I say, yeah, the paper also goes on to study specific streets in Los Angeles with volumes higher than FHWA guidance, although lower than the volumes on Fountain. Some of the streets studied include ones with volumes between 26,000 and 28,000, and compared to non-road dieted streets, the road dieted ones had about 35% fewer crashes.
Wow. So the bike hater says, oh, okay, but a study from streets in Los Angeles with 28,000 car trips is still lower than Fountain.
Yes, but I would also point out that while Fountain carries a lot of traffic, West Hollywood studied the traffic and saw more than half of it is cut-through traffic from trips that neither start nor end in West Hollywood. So why should cut-through commuters be preventing the city from making the street more locally serving?
I think that's a great point, and I often wonder why we care so much about what happens to someone who travels from outside of our city through our city, why we don't protect ourselves over them.
You're Taylor when you say that.
That was Taylor.
I was wondering.
Thank you. Now the bike hater says, I would love for Fountain to not prioritize cut-through traffic, but it won't make the traffic go away. Besides, in data, averages don't tell the story, and you need to look at distribution of incidents in which cases actually apply and look at streets similar to Fountain. It doesn't matter if road diets work in Portland. The city of LA tried a road diet on Venice Boulevard, and traffic went faster and crashes increased from 28 to 30.
All right, that's the bike hater in the script. Here's a clip of what he actually said.
Along Venice Boulevard, after the implementation of a bike lane and road diet, they saw traffic speed increased by 1 mile per hour, collisions increased from 28 to 30, and bicycle traffic actually went down. So I think a lot of these preconceived notions about what a bike lane will mean for the community are great in theory, but you have to consider the fact that roads aren't created equally, and where bike lanes might flourish might not look like Fountain.
So this is Bike Talk's response. So you don't trust studies from elsewhere because they aren't applicable, but then cite a 1-year project evaluation of Venice Boulevard that's operating with far fewer data points and is a much different context? Venice Boulevard used to be 6 lanes with a landscaped median and is 100 feet wide from curb to curb, while Fountain is 4 lanes and about 50 feet from curb to curb. And you say you're a data guy, right?
That's right.
Your concern about speeds increasing by 1 mile per hour on Venice and there being an absolute increase in the number of crashes by 2 with only 1 year of data means you're contradicting your own stance on the use of data. Why do I get the feeling that if the Venice evaluation didn't support your argument, that you would decry it for not being rigorous enough?
Okay. Now I'm the bike lane hater. But bike lanes will not inherently improve safety. It's better to be more predictable than provide infrastructure. Besides, protected bike lanes lack visibility, which can be bad for safety.
Here's Kyle actually saying something to that effect.
I'm not a very observant person. If you take bikers and further remove them from the road, I am less likely to know that that person is coming up on my right side. So I actually fear that this increases the risk that I'm going to make a right turn and accidentally hit a biker and not know it. And maybe I would have avoided that collision had there not been bike lanes, because I would have seen the biker directly in the path of travel.
That's a crazy argument.
There is a term, I think it's called vehicular cycling.
Sure, that means riding your bike like you might drive your car in the traffic lane, pulling into the left turn lane to make a left turn, whatever.
Right, basically treating yourself as though you're a car, so sure, vehicular traffic has to move around you. The more evident you make yourself to drivers, the less likely you are to be mistakenly.
That's a great point.
So Bike Talk says, while not all bike lanes are successful, local study in Los Angeles suggests they generally tend to be successful. The UCLA graduate capstone paper, To Live and Ride in LA, Are Bike Lanes Making Angelenos Safer, by Ryan Taylor Gratzer, found that bike lanes in Los Angeles do have a record of improving safety, and especially so when accounting for increases in ridership.
Okay, first of all, I got to say, I love that title, To Live and Ride in LA. That's a movie, I think, right there.
All right, Kyle.
Okay, so the bike hater might respond, I don't care about studies from LA. This is West Hollywood. I still think bikes being predictable and visible is more important.
That's the vehicular cycling argument, right?
Right.
Just ride down the... Well, protected bike lanes tend to reduce the number of people who ride on the sidewalk, so the protected bike lane will make bicyclists more predictable. You won't have to worry about some being in the road and some being on the sidewalk. The vast majority will be in the protected bike lane. As for visibility, this can be addressed through design and by increasing lateral separation between bikes and cars, even if a car driver isn't looking, though they should look for pedestrians anyway. They'll be turning more slowly and with more space, so a bicyclist can slow down to avoid a collision. Or, if there is a collision, it likely won't be as bad as being right hooked on Fountain under current conditions.
Right. And we all know that riding your bike on the sidewalk is not safe for pedestrians, one, but also for yourself, because you dart out into the intersection and sometimes cars don't see you because you're traveling quite a bit faster than a pedestrian.
That's Taylor as himself.
And the bike lane hater might say, I don't know about that. Vehicular cycling is better than providing infrastructure, in my opinion.
Bill Schultheis, a practicing engineer, and Peter Firth, an academic that studies transportation, have largely debunked vehicular cycling. They point out that vehicular cycling proponents have argued most crashes happen at intersections, so protected bike lanes are either irrelevant or bad.
See?
But what vehicular cycling proponents fail to acknowledge is that proportionately, most fatal bike crashes are mid-block. As with all things, good design can address concerns about visibility or conflict in protected bike lanes. This is why the Netherlands, a country blanketed with protected bike lanes, has more safe streets for bicycling than countries that rely on vehicular cycling.
Point taken, but look, for the 14 fatalities on Fountain in the past 12 years, 80% occurred between 9:30 p.m. and 4:30 a.m. And a road diet wouldn't do anything to reduce speeding or improve safety during those times.
And here's where Kyle said that.
When 80% of fatal collisions occur between 9:30 p.m. and 4:30 a.m., there's no barrier to speeding from a bike lane.
Actually, there's no study showing road diets only work during the day, and reducing Fountain to a single lane should make a difference at all hours of the day.
How?
Consider this. If the project moves forward, this means at midnight, when it's dark and visibility is poor, pedestrians will only need to cross 2 lanes instead of 4. Or, when the drunks are driving home from bars, a bicyclist isn't going to be rear-ended or sideswiped if there's a protected bike lane because they'll be physically separated. Even if the project does nothing to reduce speeding during the night, unlikely, people walking and biking will objectively have less exposure and proximity to cars.
And I also want to add here, we do know that narrower lanes slow down cars anyways. So if there's 1 lane as opposed to 2, or a narrow lane as opposed to a wider lane, the cars will drive inherently slower. But the bike hater does say, I guess you're right, but during trash pickup day, cars will veer into oncoming traffic to bypass the stop-and-go trash trucks, and thus this project will make the situation less safe. In fact, the project in general will incite road rage, and that'll make things even less safe.
Road diets have a record of improving safety, so much that they are proven safety countermeasure according to the Federal Highway Administration. There may be some edge cases where things didn't work out, but the data is not on your side here. Next time you go somewhere east of Fairfax Avenue, go to Silver Lake Boulevard. It's a charming little street with lots of single-family houses and multifamily housing structures and some cool local restaurants and shops sprinkled in there.
Well, now we want to bring in Kevin Burton, who is not only on staff here at Bike Talk, he is also on the steering committee for the Fountain Avenue project. And I reached out to Kevin to get some information about this whole trash pickup thing, because it did seem to me, oh my God, if a trash truck has to go 1.8 miles and pick up every trash can along that street, it is going to slow down traffic. But Kevin set me straight. Kevin?
In West Hollywood, the garbage trucks don't move an entire length of a street like Fountain Avenue. They go 1 block along the street and then 1 block down the side street and then continue 1 block at a cross street, which is another neighborhood street, and then come back up to Fountain 1 block and repeat that pattern. So they're not going to be blocking traffic for the entire length of Fountain Avenue.
Are there trash trucks on Fountain Avenue now?
Yeah.
And that's what they do.
1 block at a time.
Right, okay. So nothing will actually change in that sense, except there won't be a second lane for a car to go around it.
That's my understanding.
You're on the steering committee for the Fountain Avenue project. What do you think of this script by our bike engineer?
I think it's good. He's obviously very knowledgeable about studies on bike lanes. That's important because a lot of people commenting on this project are clearly not. And it's useful to have somebody who has all that experience commenting on specific arguments against the project and citing his sources so we can all go and check them.
Thanks, Kevin. Going back to the script, we were talking about trash pickup, and the advocate went on to say, go to Silver Lake and check that out. And so the bike hater might say, okay, but what does any of this have to do with road diets?
Well, you see, Silver Lake Boulevard, as well as Rowena Avenue and Virgil Avenue, all streets near each other, were road dieted and reduced to a single lane while carrying car volumes as high as 26 or even 28,000 every day. Silver Lake Boulevard in particular is a street with a single lane, some sections even without a center turn lane, and weekly trash pickup. You may say,
Fountain is different.
But at a certain point, you accept there are plenty of streets that operate just fine with a single lane of traffic while accommodating weekly trash pickup and having driveways.
Look, you have a lot of data, and that's great, but really nothing can convince me other than a case study for a street that is exactly like Fountain.
If the only example that you will accept is of a street with conditions identical to Fountain, then why not proceed with the project as planned? And if it yields negative outcomes, the city should commit to modifying or remove it.
Perfect.
On the other hand, if the project goes in and achieves its goals, it can stay. That sounds fair, doesn't it?
I don't know. The process is being rushed. Why weren't we asked about alternatives like speed bumps or intersection improvements? There are other, less decisive solutions, like speed humps or installing more left turn signal phasing.
The city has been talking about doing something on Fountain Avenue for over a decade, but you're right. There's something to be said for weighing alternatives or taking an incremental approach. But any design should balance safety needs with city policies and basic access needs. Speed humps may slow traffic down, but will it encourage bicycling? Will it improve sidewalks and make them more accessible?
No.
The city of West Hollywood has climate action goals, including transportation-specific climate action goals. That's in addition to goals of improving safety on Fountain. A design of Fountain Avenue that doesn't encourage or better accommodate alternatives to driving will only achieve partial success.
Well, okay, I've never considered that. So it's not just about adding bike lanes. It's about improving safety, making the street more accessible, and in turn, all this will ultimately help West Hollywood reduce its carbon footprint. Wow. Well, look, at the end of the day, I just don't want to get stuck in traffic or slow down, and I don't really care about safety if it means slowing down my commute. I don't have time for that, but I do have time to attend countless meetings and to argue with people on Facebook and Nextdoor.
So this really has nothing to do with facts or safety or altruism or trying to make the world a better place.
Shoot, I'm late for work. I gotta go. Beep, beep. Get out of my way.
And scene. That was some theater brought to you by our anonymous listener.
Right.
I gotta say, wow.
Radio plays. It's like the old days.
Yes. This could be a whole new thing.
Let's hope not. So as we wrap up our radio play section of the show, I want to bring Kevin Burton back in. Kevin, what did you think of that last section of the script?
Well, where there's the discussion of the city should be trialing this road diet, evaluating the results and making modifications later as needed. That's already a formal part of a plan. The phase one is really a pilot and can be easily modified if conditions warrant.
Great. So it is possible that if it doesn't work, fix it so that it does work better for everybody concerned.
Absolutely. That's in the plan.
Great. Thanks, Kevin.
So now we have an interview with one of the supporters of the Picture Main Street project in Northampton, Massachusetts, near where I live.
Okay. Is this going to be scripted also, or is this...
No, I don't know if that's ever going to happen. But Picture Main Street, we've talked about before. It's a redesign of the downtown area of Northampton, which is in the middle of a bike lane network in Massachusetts. The city got money to redesign the town center, which is really terrible for people on bikes and walking right now. But there's a lot of opponents. A lot of businesses are worried about the parking spots. And people just don't really understand how it's going to work because they like to be able to drive through as fast as possible.
You know, that's why the whole discussion about Fountain is so prescient, that it's the same argument over and over and over in different cities all across the country. So let's hear Thomas.
Yeah, this is Thomas Draudt.
In Northampton, Massachusetts, there is a redesign of the center of downtown. It's called Picture Main Street, and it's been approved. It's in the works. It's going to happen, but there's still a movement against it. And they call it Save Paradise City because Northampton is also called Paradise City. One of the people who is saying yes to Picture Main Street is Thomas Draudt, and he's made a series of videos called Equal Streets. Thomas, maybe you want to tell us why you're saying yes to Picture Main Street.
Well, thanks for having me on, Nick. I moved to Northampton over 3 years ago from big cities, San Francisco and Boston. So I've been around places that have, a really good bicycle infrastructure. And we have a great rail trail system here in the Pioneer Valley. And that was one of the big reasons why I moved here. And when I got here, I found out that the rail trail system doesn't really take you down into Northampton, which is the main town in this area, the main city. And it's really the cultural center. But, cycling on this main street was like hazardous and crazy, and it was nuts. And all of a sudden I found out very soon from the bicycle community that this thing called Picture Main Street is going to happen, where they're going to have a main street redesign with, complete streets, which I've seen before in other cities. separated bicycle paths on this 1 mile, narrowing the road diet, the whole thing. This is being done by Tool Design out of Boston, who is an international company doing this kind of work all over the place. And so immediately I started to see editorials in the local paper and a variety of different sources pushing back on this project. And I was really surprised because I was here in the Valley for college back in the 80s, and it's always been a liberal place and a environmentalist kind of place. And when I came back here and found out that people were against this thing, I was shocked, and I still am, actually. So I figured, well, what am I going to do about it? Because I'm a video producer and a veteran TV producer and filmmaker, my tool bag is basically a camera and a microphone. So I decided I'd start to figure out how to create some media around this topic that might help, sway some of the people if they're undecided about the merits of this kind of urban planning and design, multimodal transportation, the whole lot. Because it's not a big city, it's kind of a, rural area. They haven't really been exposed to this sort of design thing before. They don't, there's not a bicycle commuting class in this area like there is in Boston or San Francisco, so a lot of the people are like, they don't see the need for this bicycle infrastructure because they're like, well, how many bicyclists are there after all, blah, 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 And I was also working along with my friend Benjamin Spencer, who's now running for councilor at large here in Northampton. We decided there was really an education problem where people just weren't aware of the fact that places like Tool Design exist and that these are really, really well thought out engineering projects that are very complicated. And these people are doing it at the top level. And that this isn't some kind of a new thing. This is a well-tested operation. So I decided that I would make a video series. There's a place in Northampton called Strong Avenue where they close off the road in the summertime for maybe like 5 months or something like that. It's a shut road, and it's extremely popular. And it's basically what Picture Main Street's going to be. And I figured, well, what if I bring informed advocates in the area, bring them down there, and it's a beautiful spot, and talk about how Strong Avenue is going to be what we're inheriting. And, sort of like, what's the problem? And I decided, well, I'm going to do something very positive. I'm just going to talk to the people that know about this thing, paint a much more positive picture and realistic picture of what this kind of design does for our community. It's a town square, it's basically, it's money coming from the Mass DOT. It's not even money the taxpayers, this is a freebie. We get a complete facelift and underground utilities fix, which is, 150 years old, wooden pipes down there and stuff. We get that fixed, all with this whole project. And there's a million things that come along with this project, better signaling, shorter crosswalks because the road's going to be narrowed, on and on and on, benefit after benefit. And I decided I had enough of the negative stuff. I'm just going to tell the truth and show a picture of what this thing can be from a positive side.
I saw some of it, the clip that you're going to play.
This clip is Michael DiPasquale. He's an architect. He's a city planner by trade, but he's also teaches at UMass as well. I think he's retired now, but he's also been involved with this project in Northampton for many, many years. He lives here. I got like 8 or 9 short videos from him, and this is one of them, probably, a good example of what these little clips are all about.
Main Street will now no longer be primarily a street for cars. The design really creates a public space. And while many, American cities, the development of cities really had prioritized vehicles, we're going to take back the street, really. And it's going to be more balanced. So by making the street more narrow, by designing it from a more human, pedestrian-scaled perspective, we are putting in the kinds of things that will attract more people. So it'll be more lively. When you have wider sidewalks, when you have more trees, these are all the elements that we know people like. So the space will be used more. So it will really change completely the way Main Street is used. Main Street is so iconic. When people think about Northampton, they picture these row of buildings on Main Street. But now it'll be more vibrant and more vital. It's going to be a space that's used more. especially post-pandemic. We need to find ways to revitalize Main Street, to bring more life to it. This is perfect timing for this.
So the way I picked the people that I interview, which I think are a total of about 12 different people, they are either people that I've known from the bicycle advocacy and sort of multimodal transportation community here, or people that I found like Sarah, who wrote an editorial in the local paper that was extremely on point and positive about this project. She was willing to come down and talk. So this is Sarah Howard.
The multimodal transportation piece, which is riding bicycles, taking buses, walking, it's not a luxury. This is not like an additional thing on top of car driving. This is a fundamental piece of transportation for many people. I lived in public housing where many people did not own cars. These are real people in our community. This is not only people who are out there looking for a fun time, although that is a huge piece of it, and that will bring a lot of economic increase to the downtown where people are coming in to shop and have a fun experience. But there are a lot of people who rely on bicycles, buses, and walking for their transportation. We want to design for that.
So those are two of probably 60 in total of these short little videos that I have that are also going to be strung together as a TV show for community access television and on YouTube. All to say that I'm a retired filmmaker and TV producer, and I'm busier than ever with this project where I'm, trying to just get this message out as a citizen in support of the mayor here in Northampton, because it's her project, but also just in support of this idea of trying to get more pedestrian and bicycle rights to our town. These cities have been designed by, highway engineers, and we're taking our cities back, redesigning them for human scale and for people that want to congregate. Somehow it's the most important thing I've ever done, and it just kind of happened. I'm spending a lot of time on it, and it's my choice to do so, and I'm happy doing it.
Well, thank you, Thomas.
Thank you, Nick. Nice to talk to you, and hope to see you out there.
Definitely. Well, this was a different show for us, and we'll see how it goes. Yeah. We want to thank Kyle Brazil again for speaking to us at Bike Talk, and Diane Alisa, the author of Love Letter to Suburbia, and also Thomas Draudt for his video and conversation about Picture Main Street in Northampton, Massachusetts. We want to thank our regulars, Julie Richard, Kevin Burton today, Josh Haglund, Stacy Randecker, Lindsay Sturman, Charlie Lighthizer, and Amy Ziering.
And Josh Haglund.
I already said Josh.
Oh.
But, really, Josh, thanks, man.
And thanks, Taylor.
Ride safe.
This episode of Bike Talk is sponsored by the law offices of Pocras and De Los Reyes, with offices in Los Angeles and Bakersfield and serving all of Southern California.
Bike Talk is a project of CRSP and the Los Angeles Eco-Village Institute. And that was Bike Talk. If you have a story, a tip, or a topic, head over to biketalk.org and send us a message. Talk again next week.
Get that car out of my way. I wanna ride my bike today. Keep me fit, get me there. I won't go stinking up the alley behind the daily grind. Let your mind unwind. If it's life, pretend to life. Better get yourself a bike.